here we are. This is Sex Love Psychedelics, and I'm your host, Dr. Kat. Bringing you psychosexual conversations that will leave you intellectually turned on and hungry for more.
Because there is this paradox of we want to be desirable, but then how are we, how much of that weight are we putting into the male gaze? And then how do we balance these parts here? I think you said, I want to feel that I simultaneously felt that I never looked good enough, that men would not be able to resist me, and I wanted to be irresistible. So how do we hold the paradox of that? And I was like, yes, that. How can we create space for all these parts and hold them as they're simultaneously existing?
The wanting to be irresistible. Well, I think people generally do want to be irresistible, but they want other people to control themselves if they find them irresistible. I think that's part of the paradox, is like, want me, but don't act on that unless I want you to. Yeah, the never looking good enough, but also looking too irresistible is a mind fuck. It's like, I want to be ugly and I want to be beautiful. But it's the same thing. Like, you want to be beautiful and have people be able to control themselves if they find you beautiful. I think.
I think you're absolutely right. And like, what is at the crux of that is safety. From what I perceive as safety. Like, can I be safe in expressing myself and not consent to something or be pushed into something that I don't want to? And I think where you say, how do we fix that? I think a big part of it is teaching people, from my perspective, teaching people about what their limits are in their body, like how to be able to decipher a limit and a need and a desire, and to be able to express and communicate the no without fawning, or to be able to express the boundary without shutting down or freezing. And it's those reactions that are, a lot of people don't have the skills of being able to say no, or to be able to step out, or they go into these unconscious ways of managing their protection.
I'm still working through that myself, to be able to say no whenever I want to and not have to take care of the other person's feelings.
Go into that. I love that. Tell more.
Well, because I could give you an example. Like, I met a guy at a party a few months ago, and he invited me to go on a walk, and we made out at one point, and then at another point we sat in the grass. He was behind me and he just reached into my shirt and touched my boobs, and I was like, whoa, do I say something? Like, he maybe thinks that's okay. And I did. Like, I got it together a minute later and was just, but I was afraid he'd get defensive. I was like, hey, like, this was probably not your intention, but when you touched my boobs it made me a little uncomfortable. And looking back, like, he had some excuse that, like, that's okay in his culture, and that it was his intuition that I'd like it. And I was like, oh, okay, like, I don't want you to feel bad. But then, like, he tried to do something again, and I was like, no, I should have just listened the first time. You don't just like reach in and grab a woman's boobs like when you just met her. But I still felt that guilt, like, I don't want to accuse him of being like a predator, so I'm going to tread really lightly and just give him the benefit of the doubt. And it's hard to know when to give the benefit of the doubt, and it's like when to just cut off, like, set boundaries with that person.
Yeah, and you bring up, I think, a cultural conditioning too, of us wanting, and goes across all genders, of not wanting to hurt the other person's feelings, or not wanting somebody to feel like a bad person. And so we're like over functioning for their emotions versus just being able to say no, or we're afraid that the no will be translated to rejection or something.
And I've had men get defensive when I call them out on stuff. So I
Mhm.
think there's that fear of like being yelled at if I imply that you're a predator. But then
Mhm.
like the men who get defensive often, sometimes it's because what you're saying is true.
It's true. Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and thank you for bringing up this example because this is what people experience and especially yeah, this is what people experience a lot. And this is why I think it's important that we have more compassion around the concepts of freezing and fawning because fawning is another form of people pleasing of it's I don't want to say people pleasing. I want to say um a way to keep us safe in situations where we don't know how the other person's going to react to us. You know, is it going to be dangerous if I'm playful or soft or in a not being direct, then I can survive in this situation that I don't know how they're going to their yelling or their, reaction is going to be.
Yeah, and a lot of men may not realize that just by being a man in a patriarchal society, women may already feel intimidated by them. And also, generally, if a man is large and you're smaller, like you're already going to be intimidated, even if he hasn't done anything. And I think if more men were conscious of that, they might like be a little more responsible of like not saying anything that could come off as coercion because there's already like a cultural coercion happening in our minds.
Tell more about that.
Well, like you said, just like the fear that someone's going to retaliate can cause a woman to maybe go along with something if she doesn't really want it.
Mhm.
Um, or or just being conditioned to people please, which some of it is our responsibility. If you say yes when you're not really comfortable, like you haven't necessarily been assaulted, that is something you need to like figure out why you're saying that and not say it. But sometimes I feel like if somebody feels pressured to say yes, and maybe that pressure is coming partly from the other person, partly from society, um, like men may not realize that a lot of women already feel pressure going into the encounter.
Yeah, yeah. And then when you put it into partnerships too, it's like it's even murkier because it's like, well, I have sexual needs and I need to get those met through you. And so I see a lot of women who will consent even though it's not something that they want, and their body has reactions to that. And so it's just really interesting. What would you say to in this case, in this particular example, what would you say to men that would support them in these roles? Because we also don't want to demonize men and say, you can't have needs and desires too, but how could we support more responsibility around that?
Just to bring in affirmative consent and say, don't proceed until you get a clear yes. And if you sort of guilt or complain or whine, that can be perceived as pressure.
Hmm.
Another thing that can be perceived as pressure is asking more than once. If somebody says no and you keep asking again and again, they're going to probably perceive that as pressure, even if you think you're just seeing if she's changed her mind. And yeah, just talking about there should be room in relationships if somebody is not getting their sexual needs met, but then it should be talked about in a non-accusatory way. Like, I have these needs and I'm not sure what to do because I don't want you to feel pressured. Can we find a solution as opposed to grumbling or finger pointing or
Yeah.
your voice at them?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like this collaborative approach, because we also don't want to make it's such an interesting dance because I also get male clients who come in who are terrified of being a predator or perceived as that, and they're like, I don't know what to do. I'm frozen because I'm interested in this girl, but I don't want her to think that I'm a creep and blah blah blah. It's so murky.
I've come across men like that too. It's definitely better than the alternative, but I maybe, it's hard to find the balance
Hmm.
because because it's not super conducive to intimacy either if somebody just holds back. So I think the way to frame it is just to give an open invitation. Like, this is something I'd like. How do you feel about that? But some men feel scared to even say that, because then it's like just talking about sex could like make someone uncomfortable. It's I tell people to go in steps, like, you know, if you want to initiate something, maybe move closer to the person, see if she moves closer to you, maybe touch her arm, see how she responds, then like very slowly progress toward like, then maybe if she responds well, then try kissing her, just like go step by step.
Yeah. So I hear from what you just said, going slow, attuning, like reading the other person's responses and being responsive to that. That's what I heard you say.
Yeah, which may not be that easy because signals can be misread, but I think asking should also be normalized.
Yeah.
But even the asking, I think, should be step by step and not like right away. Like, how do you feel about sex with me?
Yeah.
Well, that was fun. Thanks for tuning in, lovers. And if you want to experience more ecstasy and sexual liberation, head over to sexlovepsychedelics.com and learn about how you can join me for any one of my online or live events. And while you're there, grab my free guide on sex and psychedelics. Remember, this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Please contact your healthcare provider and local law before pursuing any of the products or psychedelics discussed. And one final note here. I make this show specifically for you. If you're loving the show, then be sure to leave me a review in iTunes or Spotify to let me know. Happy to be here and happy to serve. I'll see you next time on Sex Love Psychedelics.